Right, back live with you tonight here in Focus, and thanks for staying on. Energy experts are questioning the logic of Eskom allowing experienced engineers to leave the ailing power utility during a period of difficulty. Just yesterday, Eskom confirmed the imminent departure of top engineer and former Group Chief Operating Officer Jan Oberholzer. Speaking to Newzroom Afrika yesterday, energy expert Samson Mampweli lamented Eskom management's questionable decision. Oberholzer, who has been managing Koeberg and Kusile power plants on a 2-year contract, leaves the utility on the 31st of July. Now, for more on this topic of concern, now joined by Black Business Council CEO Kganki Matabane, Solidarity Head of Research Connie Mulder, Trevor Shaku, who speaks for the Trade Union Federation, Saftu, and Hlathi Madela, Executive Director of the South African Energy Forum. You can be a part of the conversation also tonight with your views. 07211055584. Is Eskom losing, or at least depleting itself of some critical engineering capacity with some of the engineers that have been leaving the power utility? Gentlemen, good evening, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time and coming on tonight. Connie, let me start with you and your understanding of what has happened here. We learned that Jan Oberholzer is amicably parting ways with the power utility. The utility having announced not so long ago that they would be keeping him at least for another 2 years, particularly to help with the Koeberg power plant and the institutional memory that is with him. What could have happened that has led to this situation where he's now leaving at the end of this month?
I think we're not going to speculate too much into if it's amicably or what exactly happened. What is, however, clear from Solidarity point of view is, and this is a major loss, is it's somebody with more than 30 years of experience who was in charge of 2 critical projects that should have reduced load shedding by the end of the year. And if we listen to Minister Ramokgopa saying that these projects are already behind schedule, then losing the person in charge of implementing them at the moment does not bode well for South Africa going forward. It is peculiar, given that Jan was just given an extension of 2 years to manage this. But ultimately, he decides. I think what could have determined is it gets very difficult if you're in a consultant role rather than as a COO, from which he has officially retired. So we're of the opinion it's a major loss. You've lost somebody with more than 30 years of experience who is trying to implement and turn around the country, and who has done thus far is utter best. It's a man of integrity that we've known, and we consider him to basically to be a modern South African hero in terms of the Herculean efforts that he put in to trying to turn Eskom around and to arrest the power situation. Once again, however, this reiterates that Eskom is not going to be the one to solve the energy crisis. And as South Africa, we need to take a genuine, hard look at how are we going to get extra generation capacity online? How can we get it onto the grid quicker? How can we increase grid capacity and ensure that although Eskom will always be a part of the energy future, it cannot be the sole provider anymore. We're very worried about these 2 critical projects. We're very worried about these projects being delivered timelessly now due to just losing project lead usually creates some ruptions down the line. And this will ensure that South Africa will have a rough winter, not only but a rough summer, and then unfortunately we suspect a rough winter next year as well.
Yeah, I'll come back to what could be constituting those delays in a moment. But let me bring in Kganki here. Why is business quiet? I mean, business should be up in arms. We are, as sitting here, facing possibly, maybe not even possibly, it's almost a done deal, another interest rate hike this coming Thursday. And part of the reason why we are facing these high interest rates is inflation. And Eskom, in particular, is one of those contributing factors to this high inflation and this no growth. So instability at Eskom, engineers coming in and out, I think it's something that business should have actually commented on. Why are you quiet?
Good evening, Tabo, and the viewers. It's always interesting when people define what is top. So who decides that someone who has been at Eskom for so long is top when during his day, this unprecedented load shedding? So I think I saw the headline saying shocking, and I'm saying who's shocked? Maybe people who are shocked is us consumers who are saying good riddance, should have left a long time ago. I didn't even understand why he was kept there in the first place, because you do a handover if you were good. You run projects if you were good. They need your skills if you were good. But let's be fact-based. The facts are there. Him and the Rata, they were there. They messed up Eskom. They demotivated staff at power stations. They disempowered them. Hence, we are sitting where we are sitting. And it can't be every time when there's a white person leaving, then we are saying we're shocked and the top engineers are leaving. There are so many brilliant black engineers at Eskom who are left there. And the improvement that we have seen over the few months is because of those engineers that are at Eskom. And the only way, we would like to emphasize again, the only way to resolve load shedding is to fix Eskom. And the fixing of Eskom can only be done by engineers who are working at Eskom, not some retirees who fail to do their work and then they are given extra contract and then we call them top engineers. If he was top engineer, Quebec shouldn't be delayed. We've got facts. We need to be fact-based. Let's remove emotions and look at the facts. Look at the energy availability factor since he retired as the COO. It's improving. Yeah. So you can only think he was the problem.
Do you suspect, what it come to, do you suspect that part of the reason why Quebec is being delayed, it could be because of his leadership?
It's him, because he was responsible for Quebec when he was a COO with executive powers. Now, what is he going to do as a consultant with no powers? So we should not be promoting people who failed and start calling them top. We should be consistent. Top must be an acceptable term by all of us. It can't only be a certain segment of the country that says you are top, then you are top. Yeah. It can't be. Top must be seen by everyone else. From where we're sitting, and I'm sure from most of the people in South Africa, they know there were two people who messed up Eskom, and it's the COO, the retired CEO, and the CEO who left. Yeah. So we really don't understand why he was even kept there as a consultant, because if someone has not done their job, why do you keep them as a consultant?
But Madela, it's not new, this conversation of Eskom losing critical engineering talent. At some point, we even saw the Minister of Public Enterprises saying, no, he personally is writing and inviting those engineers that left to apply and come back because we need them. Were you shocked to hear that yet another experienced engineer is leaving?
Good evening to you, Tawa, and good evening to my fellow panelists, and good evening to South Africans. Jan Oberholzer is not an engineer. He refused to practice as an engineer. I like speaking facts. Anybody that dare challenge me that Jan Oberholzer has never been an engineer, he's never behaved like an engineer. Bring me two jobs that Jan Oberholzer has done in his entire life. I'm not interested in jobs that he was part of. I'm talking about jobs that he delivered. When I was 27 years old, I was in the front line of commissioning a 1 billion rand power plant at Eskom. At Sasol. This is the Afrikaners company. They put us on the firing line. We had to deliver that plant. Jan Oberholzer is the reason why Medupi and Kusile are delayed. Look at his CV. When Medupi and Kusile are delivered a couple of years late down the line, we blame the ANC. When things are good, Jan Oberholzer is willing to take the credit. He must take the bad that comes with Medupi and Kusile because he was the man in charge. He was the man that gave a contract to Black & Veatch of America. Black & Veatch was supposed to deliver Medupi and Kusile and give it to Eskom in record time and make sure that we've got nameplate capacity coming out of those two power stations. Nobody from Luthuli House, nobody from any member of the public is able to operate these plants. You give them to the high consultants coming from America and from Britain. And those consultants who messed up, they were overseen by Jan Oberholzer. Jan Oberholzer is leaving now, and we don't know why he's leaving. Let's wait up until we find out. We highly suspect that he was asked to account, and he realized that he was not going to be able to account. There is no history of Jan Oberholzer having done anything that makes sense. This is an engineer to engineer. I don't know about Connie Mulder. But Jan Oberholzer, I dare anyone challenge them to give me one project that he's presided over and that has been successful. Secondly, about the comment of the engineers that are leaving Eskom, let's stop this talk. Just write down the name of the engineers that have left Eskom. Put them all down. Tell us what is it that they did at Eskom before they left. And when they left, why did they not train the other engineers to come through, which is what we call succession planning? If Jan Oberholzer was this engineer that everybody claims to have been, he would have been the one who says, I am not leaving. I've got a man that I trained that is going to take over from me. Here is a man and here is the woman. He can't say that because everything becomes all about themselves, these guys. They want to operate this job up until they are 70 years old. Eskom is in a good situation because the powers were taken away from Jan Oberholzer as the chief operating officer. So we are celebrating the departure of Jan Oberholzer, but we don't want to speculate too much. And to come back to your question in closing, give me a list of Eskom engineers that have left and tell me what they've done before they left. People who have left Eskom have done nothing at Eskom. They left for their own reasons. There is no proof of that. Thank you.
Black Business Council CEO Kganki Matabane, South African Energy Forum Executive Director Hlathi Madela, and the head of research at Solidarity, Connie Mulder, as well as Trevor Shaku of Saftu, still with us. And you're weighing in on 072-110-5584 on Twitter at Newzroom 405. Trevor, you even joined the day of action, and you were overnighting at some point at the power utility Eskom, wanting this crisis to be averted. Why is Saftu quiet when Jan Oberholzer is leaving? And are you not concerned about the instability?
No, I think we welcome his departure precisely because over the years he has presided over the collapse of Eskom. You can't have a person who preside over key operations of Eskom, and in that particular period, you see Eskom's energy availability factor declining to even levels of 43%, from 75%, and at a particular point even beyond that. So in this context, therefore, I can't help but agree with Comrade Kganki and Madela, because this is the man who, in our view, has presided over the crisis that we see there. And therefore, there's nothing really that we would say that we are shocked or we are complaining that we are at a loss, because there is no loss here. And in our view, as a federation, we are representing capable engineers, capable artisans who are working hard to ensure that power stations continue to work, are fixed. And as a result, we're even seeing, of course, the results of those particular efforts by our own people. So in that context, we also do not understand this proliferation of the idea that Eskom is running out of skills, Eskom is running out of engineers and all of that. Because in our unions, we do have these artisans. We represent these engineers. And of course, there will be this or that particular artisan and engineer who leaves because they've seen better opportunities out there. Yeah. But that does not translate into a crisis for Eskom at all. So in this instance, such particular proliferation of a crisis that does not exist, of skill, crisis of engineers, crisis of artisans, which of course, in our view, would have been used in the past by even members of government, to especially the Department of Public Enterprise, in our view, to try to scapegoat their inability, of course, to deal with issues there. Most of what our engineers, artisans, who are members of our unions have said is that the problems there, of course, range from various factors. But amongst them is not at the center the question of skill, is not the question of engineers and artisans, but it is a question of various other factors. Of course, people would have mentioned sabotages in the past. It would have been questions around procurement, where, of course, because of failures at the managerial level, where Jan was presiding, they would not be able to order serious components on time, which Eskom power units require in order to refurbish their own units and stations. So those are problems of management. But of course, we add the questions of governance and policy. And in our view, of course, government here would have also played a historical role in creating the failures that Eskom is facing today. But that should not ameliorate the management, which is presiding and is tasked to ensure that they resolve questions of crisis at Eskom, restore the energy availability factor to more than 75% and beyond that, and also ensure that those power stations are running smoothly. In 2022, News 24 would have reported that there are 16 power stations which are out of use and constantly out of use. We're told that it is questions of budget that were affecting Eskom's ability to be able to refurbish.
Let's bring it back. I don't want us to particularly talk about power stations here. I want us to talk about engineers. But let's bring you, Connie, come in here. I know this because we spoke to you on this. You came in, you had given the Minister of Public Enterprises a list of 300, if not mistaken, or maybe more. And I believe 18 out of that list did come back. I could be wrong. Correct me here. Mr. Madela saying, show me a list. What have those people done? Why did they leave? And so on and so forth. Saying there is no such a thing as bleeding of engineers at Eskom.
Yes, so when we talk about skills at Eskom, I must say I'm quite flabbergasted that we've got people saying there's no skill shortage, since Eskom itself repeatedly states that they've got a skill shortage. In fact, in the integrated results, a skill shortage was launched.
Which one? Hold
on, Madela.
Yeah. All right. So they've repeatedly stated that they've got a skill shortage. Eskom itself published a tender that said they've got a skill shortage. They require project managers, they require engineers. Yet somehow we're led to believe that this is all fable and fiction. This is of course not the fact. Eskom does suffer from a skill shortage. We know this because the lights are off. It's one of those simple facts of nature. Is if they had the sufficient skills, we would have been able to turn this around a long time ago. Regarding Mr. Oberholzer himself, I'm honestly not going to try and defend his engineering. What I'm saying is I think Eskom is worse off after losing somebody with 30 years of experience. Under Mr. Oberholzer's leadership, at least, Eskom, he was sent in as a firefighter. We need to remember this. Unplanned maintenance of our unplanned breakdowns went from 10% in 2018. It's now almost 40%. Now, this is due to the management before him. I agree. We've got management problems. We ran the stations into the ground, and now we're simply sitting with the results of when you run a station into the ground, inevitably it starts to collapse. And this is exactly what we're seeing. We've seen Medupi and Kusile collapse with the flute collapse. And we've got Kuberg's refurbishment, which is sort of a perfect storm that he does for stage 6. Yeah. Unfortunately, I do not think Eskom is a better place now that he's left. There's nothing to do with color. It's the simple fact that if you're losing somebody with that level of experience, who's got institutional knowledge, that is a worrying perspective to then say good riddance. Yeah. So when we talk about being fact-based, however, we also need to remember it's very convenient to now try and say that load shedding of Eskom has collapsed in the last 3 years. That is not true. Eskom started collapsing in 2008. We've had load shedding for more than 16 years with very little done to actually solve the problem. Suddenly, we're now reaping what we've sown. That is the complete lack of political will to actually solve this, the complete lack of planning on the government side of the DMRE having an integrated resource plan that is woefully out of date, that has not been updated in 2 to 3 years, and that is limiting access and the capacity that we have to actually get electrons onto this grid, and putting everything at the feet of one or two gentlemen who was only in charge for the last 3 years is a bit rich if we look at the energy crisis.
I want us to confine our conversation to the engineers, because we've had the conversation of power stations and them not working. Because you've raised it again for the second time, and Mr. Matabane here has said, so let's then establish what is the standard for an experienced engineer.
Well, that would be being qualified, I would suggest being qualified and registered with engineering associations. And then, of course, experience and delivering projects is what we would look at that point. What we can say, I don't think there's an exodus at the moment necessarily. It's been a continuous exodus due to a couple of factors. The one factor that we should not discount is state capture created a completely untenable work situation for black, white engineers, for all capable engineers, and they were in the way, quite simply put, of corrupt officials who got rid of them. We're trying to lure some of them back at Eskom at the moment. We honestly do not care what color the people are who work at Eskom, as long as they're qualified and they can do the jobs. But it has not been that successful. We supplied a list of, I think it was 300. From what we can tell, almost 25 have been taken up and reabsorbed into Eskom in various consultancy roles or mentorship roles to try and focus on, and there's where I agree with Mr. Madela completely, to try and focus on skills transfer. This is what we need. Is we've got young black engineers at Eskom who simply need a bit of more skills or experience to get to the point where we can have them running power stations and making sure that the lights stay on. Obviously, if you've got somebody who has 20 years of experience in a power station, it's the ideal match to then say, but all right, please just transfer some of that experience so that we can get young guys really running stations way beyond their years, because that is ultimately what we need as a country. Is we need the best people working at Eskom.
Right.
Just to once again reiterate, South Africa's energy sector is rapidly expanding, and it is going to be decentralized and privatized de facto, if not de jure. So we'll need more skills in all aspects of the energy land.
Let's hold it there. But Madela, I know you raised your hand. I'm going to come to you in a moment. But because Kune was addressing the question that you asked, he says, no, if you qualified and if you registered and if you worked at least for a certain amount of years, we could call you a top engineer. Currently, yes, there are black engineers there, but they need to be mentored to be able to, at some point, be able to run a power station.
No, that's not good enough. The Eskom problem...
Hold on, Madela. Hold on. I'm coming to... I want Kganki to respond to it.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between 30 years of service and 30 years of experience and 30 years of competence. And that must be based on facts. And again, let's not start on believing on rumors and newspaper headlines and all those type of things. It's important that we are fact-based. And let's just look at last year. Last year, we had the highest incidence of load shedding. Basically, Oberholzer collapsed the economy.
Yeah, but you gave him an already broken system. Those things were run to the ground at that particular point in time.
No. I think it's being disingenuous. Look at since the competent board was appointed. Look at the period between when the competent board was appointed and now, and the period that Oberholzer spent there. There is improvement, as we can see now, because there's a competent governance at Eskom as we speak. Good skills, a great experience. But the management was the problem, and hence we are where we are. But we should not be creating, because of rumors and other things, saying there's a exodus of skills at Eskom, there's a skills shortage at Eskom. Let's produce evidence to say Eskom is supposed to have so many engineers. It's only left with so many engineers. Yeah. That's why it's not performing. Yeah. But you can't just come and generalize all the time, and then we want us to believe that because you are part of what is called the dominant a narrative, then everyone must believe you. We should, as a country, we must be fact-based. Anything else that someone just comes and thumbs-like figures and say there were 300 engineers. If you look, majority of those people that are called engineers
this is based, according to Kune, on posts that have been advertised. It is clear that according to Eskom itself is saying, well, these are the posts that we need. We need project managers, we need engineers. We are in shortage of skills here.
No, that's not true. We monitor the website and other institutions that are used for advertising positions. There's no skill shortage. The normal turnover that is taking place, it takes place anywhere else in the world, in any company. You are always going to get people coming in and leaving, and for different reasons. But you can't say when one incompetent individual leaves, and then we want to create a crisis. There's no crisis.
But Madela, you wanted to weigh in. You can weigh in on that. What it takes to be called a top engineer.
Yeah, look, Mantau, before I move on to what I wanted to say, for you to be called a top engineer, you have to have certain hours under your belt. Hours of hard evidence, not hours of duration of how long you've been there. You need to understand that there's plant operations, there's maintenance, and then there's project planning where new projects are being executed. What you need to do, you need a person who's fluid enough to move between operations and maintenance, as well as the planning department that goes all the way to the minister. We need someone from Eskom to say what is the impact of this country rejecting 9,600 megawatts of nuclear deals that Egypt took. No one is going to talk about those things because those things would have resolved load shedding. We need someone who says who must take ownership of the bag that Medupi and Kusile has come with. To answer your question, what qualifies a top engineer? You need to have gone through all the ranks. You have the key performance indicators. You have to claim some victories. You have to claim some things that you have done. And you have to be promoted accordingly up until you take over from the guy who's leaving. So for people then to say the top engineers are defined by the duration of how long you've worked, that's immaterial. The issue here, there's a maintenance and the operating philosophy of these Eskom powers. As we sit here today, top engineers will tell you what we need to do to plan for the next 10 years, 5 years. They will tell you how much must come from independent power producers, how much must come from Eskom, how to replace some of the power stations that are going to be decommissioned. That comes from planning. And from planning, the input and the information must come from the engineers at the operational level. That is what defines a top engineer, that the top engineer is able to take the country into confidence and say, this is my profession and this is my work and I've been trained in this environment and I'm going to write a report. I can hear people talking about us at Newzroom. Tomorrow I'm going to get on my computer. I'm going to say, hang on, this is what is happening at Eskom. But because those engineers at Eskom, they are sabotaged by the management that does not allow them to speak. You're never going to be able to separate between good engineers and the bad engineers.
I'm going to run out of time, so I've got to jump in here. Talk to me about your view on the 25 that have been absorbed. Following, by the way, it was the minister who requested Solidarity to draw up a list to address the crisis, and 25 have been absorbed, saying those are now actually doing mentorship. They're actually assisting some of the black engineers at Eskom.
Well, it's good that they are doing that because, as we said, there has to be a succession planning. But what I'm trying to get at is that it could have been any other company. Every company has to have a succession planning. So those 25 engineers that are training the up-and-coming engineers, it's okay, but there's no crisis at Eskom. I don't know if I'm answering your question. Yeah. I've got this problem that the people who come in, they come in because there's a crisis. No, people come in because people come and go in the company. As other people leave, other people have to come in. So, but there's literally no crisis. We don't have an engineering problem at Eskom. If you want to see that we don't have an engineering program, just look what has happened ever since the powers have been taken away from Andy Derrida and Jan Oberholzer. They have taken the very same system that we were told that it was collapsed, and they've made it work. And they are on their way to make it even work even better. So in other words, it's not a question of this system was collapsed. It's a question of allowing the engineers to do what they do best. And those engineers is engineers that have been there because, as you say yourself, those ones came in to mentor the other ones, not to actually do the work itself.
Trevor, got 2 minutes. Quick one from yourself. It's the political power itself that said we request a list of engineers. We need some expertise. We need some specialized intervention. It's political power itself that said that. It's not something that came out of nowhere.
Look, Thabo, I will pick up from where Hlathi Madela has left. The question is, if people are projecting the crisis here, that Eskom is facing crisis of skills shortage and specifically of engineers, the question we must ask is, why are we able, even in the very current context, able to salvage the power stations and move the energy availability factor from where it was dismally at 43% up above to about 70 to 75% at the current moment? Why are we, with that particular problems, are able to achieve that? But that, for me, is actually one of the building blocks which proves that the question of of skills is not necessarily a crisis there. The members of the union who are engineers there, who, by the way, have had a long time saving there at Eskom for more than 20 years, 23 years, and those are the comrades we speak to, and they relay these issues, that the issues at Eskom are, of course, issues of management, an inability to be able to manage and plan properly maintenance of those power stations. It is not necessarily the question of skills and engineering. That's the first one. The second one is that Eskom, of course, in its annual report for 2022, made mention of the fact that because they've been pushed by Treasury and, of course, by other people in government who wants to fiscal consolidate to reduce the headcount at Eskom. One of those, of course, is to offer people early retirement packages to live. Of course, people will, of course, accept those particular opportunities to live early. But secondly, the other thing which, of course, might lead people to live is a question where you have the growth of the so-called independent power producers, which might offer even higher and better offers for these particular workers, and these workers would opt to. But at no point does this switching of workers from Eskom presenting a crisis of skill. If there is that particular crisis of skill, they must come and say, this is the crisis of skill, and this is what it results, the outcome of this particular crisis of skill. There's never been a point where we are told that a particular unit of Eskom could not be fixed because we did not have a person who was presiding over that particular thing or who was supposed to do that particular thing. There's never been such a particular point. So we cannot be told today, when people are supposed to account that there is a problem of skills and especially of engineers, when we know that they are engineers, that we represent those particular engineers. What are they saying? Are they saying those engineers are incompetent, but they are not the ones running and planning because they are not in the management of Eskom? People who are in the management of Eskom, one of them is the one who has left. And in our view, there is no crisis that he has left. So in that instance, it cannot be that there is such proliferation of a crisis that does not even exist. There is a crisis of energy, but not crisis of skills at Eskom.
Let's take some thoughts coming through on 072-110-5584. I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up, Connie. But here's what viewers are saying there online to the conversation tonight on WhatsApp. Anonymous saying, evening, Thabo, you have invited a sober-minded panel there. It's not right when white men leave, and we always want to praise them. The two gentlemen are correct. If he was that good, why do we find ourselves in the situation we are in? There are good engineers like Coco. It is unfortunate that he finds himself in the middle of courts. All right, some thoughts there on WhatsApp. Connie, let me give you this opportunity just to wrap up your thought. Quick one.
Thank you, Thabo. Just to reiterate, we didn't start with the skills shortage. Minister Gordon is under the impression there's a skills shortage. He reached out to us. We provided the skills. Eskom itself has produced a tender document in August of last year that gets a company to procure or to headhunt some skills. We published that tender document on our website in August of 2022, which explicitly states that there's a skills shortage. Whilst we're dealing with facts, let's just deal with actual proper facts regarding the skill situation at Eskom. We've repeatedly been offering our hand to help and offering skills to help. We'll continue with that. We desperately want the country's lights to be on. We want the people who keep it on to be skilled and competent and to be able to do it regardless.
Let's leave it there for tonight, unfortunately, because of time. Thank you very much for coming on, Trevor Shaku, Madela, and Connie Mulder. And thank you very much for driving all the way and coming in tonight and being with us. Thank you. All right, that's where we leave it then. And we'll update you on what's been making news tonight on In Focus when we continue. Stay with us.